Ask Reddit. What happens in movies or TV that seems to be normal, and you think to yourself that is not what people in real life do? Unpopular, but never actually ugly, teenager wakes up in their huge upstairs bedroom. The room probably has some kind of bay window or unique ceiling slope. In the 90s and early 2000s they would of course have their own desktop computer. You only briefly see all of this because they are of course late for school, so they run out to their good-looking parents and siblings already eating a full sit-down breakfast. No explanation is given as to why these siblings aren't also late for school. Anyway, main character grabs a single slice of plain toast and skateboards to school through a quaint town square. She's running late because she needs the extra time to skateboard to school. She will need regular stops along the way to defog her glasses. Yes. I know, right? Everybody's all cheerful. There's a nice breakfast spread. Mom or dad was cooking. Neighbors are popping in and out chatting things up. Apparently they don't lock their doors. I was always upset once I reached middle school that we didn't eat huge, balanced breakfasts in the morning before school like in movies. Never mind that when I was younger I'd eat breakfast at school. I missed something I never had. School buses honking and waiting for kids that are still in the house. If I wasn't at the bus stop when the bus arrived, it would drive on by. It didn't stop. It didn't honk. It didn't wait. If every kid at the stop got on, then the bus left. If you were 50 feet away you better hope you can run and catch it, or you're going home to tell mom you missed the bus again. Mine did. I remember when both my sister and I were sick at the same time mom had to flag the bus to keep going. Same, and I wasn't even rural. But all the kids on my bus route were spread out in the neighborhood with only 1 or 2 kids on each street. So the bus pretty much stopped at everyone's house except for a small handful of people who lived at a dead end or the few streets that had multiple houses. If you weren't outside the bus driver would give a honk, and if give you a second before she drove off. And the buses got to the school at least half an hour before classes started, so it's not like we were in a rush. I missed the bus once. But luckily it went down to a dead end and turned around and came back every day so I could be a minute or 2 late and still catch it. But one day she decided she wasn't stopping for me. Guess she had had enough. So I walked to school from then on. She saw me walking to school in the rain once and stopped to pick me up and I kept walking. Yeah, I'm petty. My neighborhood in high school had one main road that split in half and 2 buses would run through my neighborhood. I was the first stop for my bus and if I missed it, I would walk to the next block and wait at what would be the 4th pickup for my bus. The other bus came in from the other direction, so if I missed my second chance I would cross the main road, walk another block and wait for the other bus. There was one time my junior year I was grounded and had my car taken away. I missed the bus at my stop and walked to the next block and saw the other kids waiting there, so I knew I hadn't missed that spot. But apparently that day we had a substitute driver who wasn't familiar with the route, and he completely skipped that other spot, and the other bus just drove past us while we were waiting. So I had to walk home and explain to my dad what happened so I could take my car, and he then yelled at me for not coming home sooner. And I'm just wondering how he expected me to know the driver was going to skip the bus stop. Unfortunately it does actually happen. I was on a back highway, where the houses were a bit off the street, and the bus stopped at just about every other house, sometimes ones right next to each other, larger lots, but still reasonable to expect just 1 stop instead of 3 in a row, where the kids would not leave the front door till the bus was fully stopped, walk their 1/2 to 3/4 acre front yard, without a care in the world about the time it was taking them. A few feet up the road, it would happen again. I found a new route to work after this happened a few times. I get not wanting a kid to stand next to a highway, but geez. I mean, you try not to be in, but you can't help not knowing if you didn't even know it was something you should be aware of. I grew up in a place where taxis didn't exist, much less public transport. I rode a bus for the first time in my 20s. I thought I was going to get on the bus, swipe my card to pay for the fare, and ride to where I needed to go. Instead, I found out that they only took cash when I got to the top of the stairs. No problem, I'll just give them a 5 and get change. Nope. They only take exact change. Now I'm scrambling, knowing I'm holding up the line, trying desperately to find some quarters. I finally pay, get to my seat, and follow along on my map to know where to get off. I push the button when we get close to the stop and realize that I was looking at a stop that's on the other side of the road. We've already passed the stop I was supposed to get off at. A mile down the road, I finally get off and have to walk back, because I definitely don't have enough cash for another bus fare on top of the one I'm going to need to pay to get home. I'm already going to have to go into some store and ask them to break a bill into coins for me cause I can't pay the bus fare back with what I have in my wallet. I had no idea how hard it was going to be to ride a bus. So yes, I was the dumb country hick who didn't know how to use basic public transport, but I wasn't struggling on purpose. My best friend somehow actually had a bus driver that did this. They would stop and honk and wait. I had to stay with her for a few weeks in high school, because my stepmom got pneumonia and my world was changed. They also only had like a 15-minute bus ride and would complain about that. I had an hour and a half 2-hour ride, and had to wake up at 5 every morning. They literally lived the ideal movie/TV show life. I was the first stop on my route. On cold winter mornings, the bus hadn't even had time to warm up when I got picked up. I remember bumping my head on the windows when the bus hit a bump and I was trying to nap. When I was little and got picked up at my babysitter's house, my bus driver actually did this. This bus mostly picked up the kids who lived in the country, so it stopped at each individual house and waited. Yeah, we had a bus stop that was a little over a block away. It picked up multiple kids in the neighborhood. If you weren't there, you missed the bus. My middle school ran on a weird schedule where we had to be there by 7:30 or so. The purpose was so that they could get the runs to our school in, and then pick up the elementary school kids without hiring extra drivers/buying extra buses to run everyone to the 2 different schools at the same time. I had to be up by 6 a.m. or 6:30. My mother didn't have to be up until about 7. Within the first week there, she handed me an alarm clock and told me I was responsible for getting myself up and getting myself to the bus stop on time. It's probably not common, but public buses in Cornwall use stop where you ask if you live somewhere more rural with only 1 or 2 stops. I used to see it a couple times a week on my bus home from college, that the bus would pull over wherever even without a bus stop. I know special ed buses do this in buses that take kids to Head Start, or to a school for kids with developmental delays, or to preschool that is ran by the school district. Source: I rode one until I was in 2nd grade. So funny story, at work years ago we had a woman who had previously worked in aerospace, so she literally was a rocket scientist. She pointed out that sometimes the short bus is used for the gifted students to transport them to gifted schools. Of course we responded, yeah, that's just what your parents told you. Can confirm, my mother was a short bus driver for many years. I sometimes rode on her route with her on days off. She would honk at every house, wait about 10 to 15 minutes, and loved every one of those adorable hellions. It is. When I was a kid, they didn't. They also didn't have bus stops anywhere within 1 mile of the school, because that was considered close enough to walk. My house was conveniently located barely within that mark to all 3 schools I attended growing up. I was jealous of my friends that took the bus, because it gave them time to hang out with people. These days, the school buses pick up kids no matter how close they are to the school, and stop at nearly every house. Spoiled brats. My town wasn't exactly small or rural, but there were absolutely no sidewalks anywhere. I lived only a mile from the school and typically took the bus, but occasionally I'd walk, and my option was to either walk in knee-high grass or walk on the highway. It was not uncommon to see teenagers walking on the edge of a major highway with cars going 60 miles per hour past them. As someone who grew up on a main road, the bus goes to each house on a main road, but a small neighborhood would have to walk to the end of the street. It just depends. It does happen. I had a really nice bus driver in high school who must have known I was in charge of waking both myself and my mom up every morning. I have retained my ability to leap out of bed in a panic, slam on clothes, grab bag and contact lens case, and be out the door in 30 to 60 seconds. My bus driver used to creep down my street because I'd always be running out the house last minute, or be running to the bus stop. He knew to expect it, but I don't think I ever got a honk. My bus driver was a saint for waiting for a minute or two if she could. Until people started abusing the system and always being late, then being dicks about her leaving them. Nah, our school bus used to wait for a few minutes and honk. If I was sick or we were out for the day for any other reason, we would wave them away through the window. But there were a few times I was sick in bed and they honked and waited for like 5 minutes. The bus company our school used was known for being really good though. They were not typical. Dreaming of kissing a beautiful woman, but actually you're just being licked by animal. No joke, I was having this dream where I was eating lunch with my friend. Then out of nowhere he sat next to me and tried to breastfeed on my armpit, and started to knead it like how a cat makes bread. I wake up and look over and the kitten we recently adopted was trying to latch onto my armpit hair, and was making bread on it too, just like the dream. Isn't it kind of crazy that your mind somehow knows to put something somewhere in a dream only to be used to incorporate a sound from the real world into it? Like in a dream, I will decide to turn on a radio and listen to tunes only to find out later that I missed class, because it was really my alarm going off. How did I know to turn on the radio? It was there and I went to turn it on right before the alarm went off. My best guesses are either my mind. Because nothing really makes sense and memory is wonky in the dream world, so it kind of just makes it seem to me in the morning when I recall the dream that is what happened. That or it's confirmation bias. The only times this happen is when there is an object conveniently in place that can be used to justify the sound from the real world. When there isn't one, you just wake up and don't think anything of it. Think of how many times you set your alarm and don't sleep through it. It seems more than possible to me. This is it. Your mind is great at you and will retroactively add memories to a dream, so your alarm goes off, and you believe you decided to turn on the radio and switched it on, and that's why that sound is happening at that moment. What's really fun neurologically is when you get people with issues that make stuff like this happen in real life. If you're awake, it's called confabulation, when your mind gives you completely fake information that you relate to other people as if it is true, with no intention to be deceptive at all. This can happen, for example, in the case of someone who's had a stroke and been paralyzed on one side of their body. So they'll have a left arm, and they won't know or believe it. If you tell them they're paralyzed, they'll go, "No, I'm not, I'm fine." You tell them, "Okay, then move your arm," and they will say bizarre things like, "It's just very tired right now," or just, "I don't want to at the moment," or insist that they've just done it when they didn't. They sound like they're just being weird and about it, but they have no intent to lie. Their brain is just feeding them fake information. One thing that drives me berserk in movies is when someone is driving and talking to their passenger. They refuse to keep their eyes on the road and insist on making prolonged eye contact with the person next to them. In the movies, this often means a jump scare car crash is about to happen. I'd like to say that's unrealistic, but my mom used to drive that way all the time. I hated going anywhere with her. This fills me with unease even when I know for a fact that they're not going to crash. I find myself saying out loud, "Look at the road, look at the road, ah." Same, I always think the show is about to introduce a car crash as a plot point, and it took so many times of being proven wrong for me to just realize I'm always going to be uncomfortable, and if they were going to do a distracted driving lesson, it'd probably be with a cell phone. Paradoxically, I'm even more upset when they don't crash, or even have a close call. The script is basically saying it's fine to take your eyes off the road for several seconds, ESP. If the driver is delivering words of comfort or inspiration. Soldiers running towards the enemy instead of hanging back and setting up suppressing fire. I've also read that pretty much nobody actually charges towards the enemy in a last-ditch effort, because as I understand it, most people don't actually want to die. The key is to scream, "AAHHHHHHH," while rushing towards the enemy soldiers. You'll nail each of them with perfectly aimed shots without receiving so much as a scratch, cover be damned. Seriously though, a co-worker relayed a story told to me by his father, who fought in Vietnam. A buddy of his felt bold one day and stepped out from his cover to go for a style charge towards the enemy. He didn't make it 2 steps. If you watch or/combat footage, this is exactly what happens in case of US troops. Everyone hits dirt, starts returning fire, figures out where the threat is, and then pushes it. I am not a soldier, but I've seen it said often enough that the first reaction to the ambush must be to take back the initiative as soon as possible, which means counterattacking, immediately advancing on the enemy. I freaking hate that scene in Batman Dark Knight Rises when all the cops are running down the one street towards Bane and co. who have machine guns and armored vehicles. They could easily have just gunned them down. Instead they do a West Side Story and brawl it out. I was scanning the whole thread waiting for someone to mention this. That scene genuinely ruined the rest of the movie for me. It makes absolutely no sense except to try to look cinematic. That is still a relatively standard doctrine for defending when ambushed. The Brits actually had just such a situation in the Iraq War a few years back. A convoy was hit by IED with vehicles disabled. After a few hours of fighting, they were low on or out of ammo after being ambushed. The officer in charge ordered the men to fix bayonets and charge. That order isn't given too often these days, but the charge was actually extremely successful in disrupting the attack and credited with saving the lives of most of those men. So this kinda works in insurgency, which tries to be realistic. If you run across a front at enemies at the same moment your teammates start a push, they will target you, and be more likely to miss, as at a full run it's actually hard to hit somebody. They then start to miss more when suppressing fire hits, and you can curve your run towards them. It also works in paintball, haha. Curving your run towards a new position, so as you run towards the next spot your speed relative to the enemy changes, messing up the amount of lead they need on the shots. I don't think it is fair to throw Starship Troopers into this discussion. The attack on Clenditha being dumb is the point, it's not just our opinion as viewers. The soldiers get slaughtered because they're clearly not properly trained to face the bugs, they isolate themselves, they get too close, they abandon their comrades in panic. The assault is horribly planned because of the arrogance of the humans who thought they were going to easily crush some dumb animals. Following the defeat, the commander of the fleet is replaced, a special unit is formed, and its members are shown as leading other soldiers through the later stages of the war. That's why I can't see how the movie falls into the trope. Well, yeah. They underestimated the bugs. They didn't know the planet was that well defended and didn't know the bugs could shoot down ships in orbit. The state news describes it as a disaster with 300,000 dead, and the Sky Marshal resigns in disgrace. Band of Brothers is very good about it. Not a movie, but close enough. The attack on German 105s at Brecourt Manor, which I believe is in episode 2, is one of the most accurately portrayed assaults on a fixed position that I've seen Hollywood do to date. The assault itself is still studied at West Point, or it was at the time of the show's release anyway, and the portrayal in the show, aside from a little bit of time dilation for dramatic license, is very similar to the after-action reports. I'm doing something, my visiting sister comes out of the shower in a towel, just as my wife, who has never seen my sister, comes home. I scream, I can explain. Then stay silent and guilty looking. There's also the other way around. No time to explain, and the next thing is they are all stuck in traffic for 2 hours. In the same car. And when you finally arrive wherever they were going, you get separate. And your wife starts making out with your sister to show you. Or they somehow befriend each other, but hate on you because of what you did when you next meet either of them. Because somehow, nothing got explained. Not in the kitchen where you all meet. Not while everyone's getting ready to go. Not while you're opening the garage and drive the car out while the two wait in front. Not during the traffic jam. Not while the two are stuck together, even though they exchanged literally every other detail about their life. Or yours. Also, who TF comes out of the bathroom in a towel? Do people not dress in the bathroom? Edit. Apparently it's pretty common to dress later when the body has dried thoroughly. It's just strange to me because I don't like being naked all that much. Also, I always shower in the evening and put on my pajamas right afterwards. Wheel, the more you know.